This is Mission Critical to Mission Accomplished. Tune in to Constant Technologies podcast, where we keep up with the latest in Operations Center technology and applications.
I feel the liftoff. The clock has started.
This is Mission Critical to Mission Accomplished by Constant Technologies. I'm your host, Sean Heath. International is really becoming a key modifier in almost any job title for almost every company on the planet. Well, my guest today gets to watch that up close and personal. He's the Chief Technology Officer for Constant Technologies, Steve Sullivan. Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Sean.
And is that a pretty fair assessment? Is international becoming just a normal word? It's not really a weird modifier anymore, is it?
It's not. It's certainly something that over the years, we've done certainly an increase in international work. We do have clients that are solely based in the U.S. and they're really never going to, go international or anything like that. But if I look back historically at our previous projects and then at our forecasts, it's become more of the norm now rather than the exception that we're going to be doing some international work with our partners and our clients.
And let's talk about that for just a moment. U.S.-based companies that maybe are dipping their toe in the international footprint versus an internationally based entity. That changes the scope of a project, but also it increases the possibilities of a project. These companies that are traditionally U.S.-based, they don't really have to have as much fear of the unknown of stepping into international waters, so to speak.
Right. That's true. It's funny because we often will start working with a company that is based in the U.S. and they may either be expanding or they might be a global corporation that has interests in has to create maybe regional data centers or mission control centers somewhere. We found that our workload has increased significantly over the years with these international partnerships. We may do one project in the States or 10 in the States, and that just might lead into, 1 or 10 more overseas, whether it's in Asia or Europe or, India or something like that.
And as these AV integrators are expanding and rapidly into these international markets, that creates some unique challenges. The most obvious ones, language barriers, voltage, having the right dongle or connector. I mean, the list of things that are drastically different from country to country and culture to culture, that's a big list. But there are a lot of common factors too. The thought of getting the project done right, getting it done on time, getting it done under budget, those concerns are the exact same regardless of the country or language.
Right. Yeah, so I think whether it's international or in the U.S., every project that we have has its own challenges to work with. Like you said, the international ones, we have to consider voltages or just different dimensional data sets and things like that. But I think logistics becomes, a lot more difficult, more of a challenge, to work with. How long is something going to take to get through customs? There might be certain certifications that a product needs to adhere to in order to even bring it into the company or into the country. Things like that we have to be aware of. Super important for us working through a project to understand the little questions that we have to ask. What is a voltage? What is this and that? But it becomes more and more important as we're working through the designs, to have our team members or project managers really be diligent to be on their regular calls and meetings with the end users, with the client. They have to stay in touch with what's happening on site. We have to make sure that we're making site visits a priority to check in on construction and whatnot. We want to stay ahead of the game, find any issues that might be happening early on so they can be corrected before we even remotely start shipping anything to site,
And time becomes an even more important factor in these international projects. And I'm not just talking about time spent, as you mentioned, getting through customs. I'm not talking about time in that way. I'm talking about time of day. You have to be constantly aware of local time for all parties involved. That's a huge schedule to be juggling.
Yes, I often feel bad for our project managers who, are on conference calls, in the middle of the night or very early mornings. They don't really keep regular hours, but it's part of the gig, and they do a really great job with it. Additionally, we send our install crews overseas to work, so they're dealing with time changes and shifts. So right across the board, it's an adjustment to make, but it's something that we've done for a number of years, and have a pretty solid comfort level with it. And it's sort of become the norm in that sense.
And it became a norm really quickly. I mean, integrators just kind of blinked, and all of a sudden they're global operators.
Right. Yeah. Well, you have these clients that, may have started off in the U.S. and they say, hey, we're doing a project in Asia. Of course, you want in on that. So it's exciting stuff where, it gives us the opportunity to grow and expand along with them and our end users.
From your position as the Chief Technology Officer, the nuts and bolts of how things work, that's your daily bread, right? As we talk about international standards, do you see a coming together of the technological designs and desires, or is that still a major bottleneck between idea and implementation?
I think that it certainly can be. There certainly can be differences. We often have the luxury of working with a particular user group at an organization and designing a standard that they're going to abide by. So when we design their spaces or their systems and do the integration, we've already mapped out, what the requirements are, what are the levels of redundancy, so we have sort of a base plan that we want to adhere to. The things that we have to work around when it becomes an international project are more simple, and they're just like the voltages. So which PDUs we might use in a rack or something like that. So we are in a good position there where we're designing these things out to meet their standard across the world. They have a certain standard set that they want to develop.
Mission critical command centers is something that you have a lot of experience with there at Constant Technologies. Does the fact that it is literally critical, that's not just a tagline, that's an actual description, does that ramp up the anxiety to make sure, even more so, to make sure that a project is crisp and perfect?
No, I don't think there's any anxiety there, since it's sort of our bread and butter. It's what we do. We're very used to the concept of mission critical. It's our, the majority of what we do. So every job that we take on, we consider mission critical, and it's just as important. One is just as important as the next. One of the most important things as you're starting off with a client is understanding their idea of mission critical. What is, if the display goes down, is that absolutely critical to them in their eyes? We want to understand their tolerance of that risk. Should one certain piece of the puzzle fail, and then what we want to do from there is offer them solutions as backup plans and redundancy models and things like that as options. So we really minimize any risk that they have to their environment. If a piece of the puzzle goes down, we want to make sure that they have a backup, or that they can get back up and running as quickly as possible.
Regardless of the country, at this point in our evolution as humans, AV is no longer considered a want. It's almost always a need now, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, these centers that we're doing have become such a vital tool that these organizations used, that they can monitor information and react very quickly to it. They become collaborative environments. So the roles of these spaces has definitely become more of a necessity than a want.
From the technological side, is there a particular project over the last couple of years that just pops into your head as being one of the most challenging as far as just overall implementation?
I can think of a few that we're working on that certainly are very challenging. And the challenges usually come when we're introducing new products. So we want to make sure that things are going to work very well together. But yeah, I can think of a few that are sort of on the cutting edge of technology, and they're definitely fun to work on.
And those ones that are the most challenging probably also fall at the top of your list of the projects that you're most proud of.
Absolutely, yes.
I was reading the website, and you have projects that have been completed on 5 continents.
That's right.
It's summer in Dallas today, and so I was just wanting to ask, for no reason in particular, you don't happen to have any projects coming up in Antarctica that I could join you on, do you?
We've spent a lot of time in Dallas, and I have personally. I've baked a green apple from the hotel on my car accidentally down there.
I will buy the parkas, the gloves, hand warmers, whatever you need. I mean, just help me out here. Come on, Steve. Let's go to Antarctica.
Go somewhere cool.
Today, it has been an absolute pleasure to have a conversation with the Chief Technology Officer for Constant Technologies, Steve Sullivan. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. And once these challenging projects that you're working on get finished, I would love to have an opportunity to talk to you again and go into some more detail about some of the challenges that you faced and maybe some of the neat ways that you overcame them.
That's great. I appreciate the time, Sean. Thank you.